Okay. Continue.
Yeah, there we are. Morning. How's John?
Hey, John, you look surrounded by books. You've got your mute on. So you right image for the video conferencing. Everyone on television has the books around them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where's Al, you see? Al's got all these older looking books.
Oh, mine are all colouring books.
I've got a football shirt.
That's much better.
Mine haven't got any dust on the books. They come in handy with this COVID because my wife is supplying the old dears in the village with books to read.
All right. Well, it seems like you've got a fair collection there, John.
Well, I've got everything. Yeah. Some of my age, 5 and upwards.
Morning.
Morning.
Not much golf on going on today, Nettie.
Not yesterday either, but hopefully the weekend. We've got the club championship at the weekend. They tried to change the rules because one or two guys were complaining about the flags having to stay in. But actually they got the RNA said they're not allowed to. They were going to do what they've been doing on the professional, where you put a white round the side and you pick it up and put it back yourself. But they said no. So there's still a fair amount of worry around changing some of the game rules. I've been watching the cricket as well, which is quite interesting. They're all sort of staying in what they call this bubble. So they're playing on grounds that got their own hotel, so they don't have to leave the ground till they finish the games.
Yes, right, yeah. What's the score?
It was 3 down when I came upstairs. 50 for 3, England.
All right. Because they didn't play yesterday, did they?
They played for about 5 overs. I think they lost a wicket first ball, and then it sort of rained, but they've started on time today. It's going to be an interesting game. I think they said it would only last 4 days, so now they've only got 4 days.
Yeah. Interesting to see how the captain does, wasn't it?
Well, it's going to be a quite a change for him, isn't it? Because he's had no pressure and he's been the star man. Today is probably the sort of position where he hasn't been captain. He performs really well, so he's just come in at 50 for 3, and both of them was on 0. So it'll be interesting to see if captaincy has a stress on him, like it's done with the few of the past all-rounders.
Yeah. He's a bit of a botham, so I think he'll either come up or he won't. He'll either score the quickest century or get out for napping.
I think.
Hi, Domenico or John, has anyone spoken to Austin?
I haven't heard anything from Austin, Nick.
I'll call him.
I'm going to get a free TV license, mate. I've just announced it. Yeah.
I've just spoken to him and he is coming.
Some good news on the economic front this morning, John. John Lewis is going to open up
Yes.
in Peterborough.
Yeah. Fantastic news.
Yeah. I didn't say when, though.
No.
It's the 30th of July. They're opening on the 30th.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, really good news.
Yeah, looks good, doesn't it?
Fantastic.
Yes. 30th of July, right? There we go. Do you want this book?
Yeah.
Because it's in there.
Nick, I think we're just waiting for 4 more people. Chair, I do make it that you are quorate, although we're still waiting for some more people.
We are. So just to confirm, we are quorate, are we?
Yeah,
In terms of voting, I can't see all of the people on the screen again.
yeah, you've got 1 apologies, and then we're just waiting for, on my list, we're waiting for 3 more people to join. So can I just double check with Nick? I think we are quorate, Nick, aren't we?
Yeah, we're quorate. We're just waiting for Amir, Nikki, and Andy Neely.
Amir won't be joining us.
No, Amir sends his apologies, and I asked him to step down given his conflict of interest in this meeting. Okay, let's just give it a couple of minutes, see if anyone else joins, and then we'll press on. I have to admit I don't have any chair's briefing notes to hand immediately. If they've been sent to me, I missed them. So we're going to wing it a little bit, but I think there's only one issue to deal with, as I recall.
Chair, I can send them to you now if
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Everyone's now here, Chair.
Perfect. Just give me one moment. All righty, let's make a start. Apologies. Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to the extraordinary meeting of the Business Board. Thanks everyone for the participation at very short notice. We're dealing with some quite fast-moving issues. In terms of technical arrangements, today's meeting is being held by Zoom video conferencing and will be live recorded for governance purposes. If you experience any technical difficulties during the meeting, please refresh your connection in the first instance. Board members' participation will be monitored for quorum purposes. If it becomes apparent that we have lost members and we're no longer quorate, it may be necessary to adjourn. We may have to reconvene the meeting as a telephone conference. Can I remind board members that this is a private meeting which only
business board members and specific officers are invited to. So trust you're all in a secure place. To ensure everyone is online and present, can I please confirm your name so attendance can be registered? I'll read through the roll call. Tina?
Yes.
Good morning, Tina. Good afternoon. Mark Dorset?
Yes.
Mark Fay Holland?
Yes.
Amir has sent his apologies. Al Kingsley?
Yep.
Al, Nikki?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Jason?
Yes.
Jason. Andy?
Hi.
Andy. Nitin?
Yeah.
Rebecca Stevens?
Yes.
I believe we've got apologies from Kelly Swingler. And then we have James.
Afternoon.
Councillor John Holditch.
Present.
Good afternoon, John, and myself, Austin Adams. Okay, declarations of interest. This is an opportunity to declare clear interests in any other conflicts of interest. Do members have any conflicts to declare? Please shout. Perfect.
Sorry, Austin, I'll just quickly declare that Start Code On is subject to LGF funding.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Austin, given that part of the conversation is about the university, I will make general comments about the state of education, but not particularly about the university case itself.
Sure. Noted. Thanks, Andy. Perfect. Okay, then can I turn to John, please, to present the report on the local growth funded allocation of CPCA Business Board funding, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, accelerated access to the 2021 LGF budget has been provisionally offered to the Business Board, amounting to 14.6 million. That itself was calculated on a formula that was based on our population size and the level of forecast COVID scarring on our economy. Specifically, the Business Board is being asked to note the process by which these funds were awarded, to agree the plan to deploy the awarded funds, and formally accept the offer from MHCLG. If I could give you a summary of how we got to this position very, very quickly. On the 10th of June, the Secretary of State issued a letter calling for shovel-ready projects with a deadline of the 18th of June for LEPs and CPCAs or MCAs to get back to the Secretary of State. This was for capital only LGF projects with the ability to spend within 18 months and generate job outcomes within the following 18 months after that 18 months of spend. There was a clear note in the letter, which is an appendix to your pack, that all projects would, of course, have to comply with the local assurance framework. Just for clarity, what this means is the Secretary of State was asking for LEPs and MCAs to ask to be allocated funding. This wasn't approval of funding. Once the funding is allocated to us, the projects that we select, and I've got a logic for which we should, we'll have to go through the normal approvals process and come back to you as the board for approval of funding in the normal way. There was some confusion around the letter sent, as the Secretary of State sent or copied the letter to all local authorities in the country and didn't make it clear that there should be one or multiple submissions for these projects. Officers became aware that other local authorities were submitting their own lists too, due to this confusion. Appendix B gives you, which I don't intend going into now unless you'd like me to, gives you the process by which we tried to rank the projects that we had already in our pipeline against the criteria that were in the Secretary of State's letter, and also rank the brand new local authority projects that had popped up for inclusion in our lists. We were informed on the 1st of July of the decision of MHCLG and the amount being allocated, that being 14.6 million. Dialogue then with the Citizen Local Growth Unit identified that all of the lists that went forward nationally had only been evaluated in terms of the first 5 ranked projects in that list. And that they wanted to go through the top 5 projects with us. They had discounted through their evaluations 2 of the top 5 ranked projects, that being an enterprise centre, business centre, as part of the Kennet Garden Village bigger project, just outside Ely. And this was discounted on the basis that the ask was 3.5 mil against a 140 mil project, and government didn't view that as having sufficient additionality, in that without the extra funds, it would not otherwise go ahead. The other project of the top 5 that was discounted was a project to develop a prototype for the CAM, Cambridge Autonomous Metro vehicle. That was eliminated because it had too few jobs potential in the following 18 months, and also that BEIS or MHCLG considered that actually it was a revenue project rather than a capital project. That left 3 projects in the top 5 that they were prepared to talk about. That is the Peterborough University Phase 2 project to create a research centre and innovation ecosystem, about which there is an appendix in your pack. The College of West Anglia Construction Hub, which members may remember you have already approved for funding, but they had to pull out themselves because they couldn't guarantee to be able to spend the money by the 31st of March. This new money has January 2022 as its deadline. So that one comes back in. And a new project that was put forward around a clean energy park in Huntingdon, that although new to us, did score well enough on our criteria to get it into the top 5 projects. Officers did recommend to the chair that we should take forward, of these 3 projects, we should take forward only the #1 priority project, the Peterborough University Phase 2 Innovation Ecosystem. And that was on the basis that without the full 14.6 million of funding offered against the requested 16.5 million for that project, the project would not go forward on the basis of a competitive offer from another city location in the north, and another combined authority that was already offering more than we were within their offer to relocate this innovation company. Also, that without the full 4.5 million of that 16.5 million that was allocated to the slip roads on Frank Perkins Way to gain better access to the university campus, that this extra building, extra to the Phase 1 building, would not gain planning permission because of the transport issues that it would throw up. Also, that the College of West Anglia Construction Hub was of a relatively low strategic priority in terms of the LIS compared to the Peterborough University. And there was also some uncertainty about the operational and the financial strength of the applicant that put in doubt whether they would be able to deliver by January 22. Further, the Huntingdon Clean Energy Park was also a relatively low strategic priority. And again, there was uncertainty on the deliverability in that project because there was uncertainty about whether all the other funding was in place other than the LGF being requested. So a meeting was convened on the 7th of July, so Tuesday, for officers to present the case for the deliverability for the #1 ranked project, consisting of a research centre on the new university campus. Questions from Communities Local Government Unit focused on deliverability. They didn't call into question the strategic selection of this priority, only its deliverability. Particularly, they were calling into question the 1.9 million funding gap between the 16.5 million that had been requested for this project and the 14.6 million that had been offered by government, and how that 1.9 million gap would be bridged. At the meeting, which was attended by Peterborough City Council Chief Executive and Director, the 1.9 millimetre, don't know where that came from, 1.9 million gap was proposed to be funded from the transport budget from Peterborough City Council for the 4.5 million pounds worth of slip roads needed to make the project fly. They also questioned the 1.5 million of private sector funding from the LGF applicant themselves, which at the moment is confidential for reasons I'll explain later. This was confirmed by the applicant, who was also at the meeting, along with their prediction of between 10 and 15 million pounds more in existing equipment relocated from other cities within the UK, and research expenditure as well on top. The BEIS also explored the procurement and whether we could procure in time for a March start on construction, and we took them through our procurement process and the fact that it was in parallel with the planning process. They also took us, of course, through the planning process to allow for construction to start in March 2021. And that was handled in the main by our consultants, our architect, and very much by Peterborough City Council, who have put in place a whole raft of measures to ensure that the planning permission can be achieved in time. And that is, I believe, Appendix D in your pack. So in summary then, the business board is being asked to formally accept the allocation of the 14.6 million of LGF from the 2021 budget allocation brought forward into this financial year. The business board is asked to approve an invitation to the 2 potential applicants for this funding, which would be Peterborough City Council, potentially, but certainly the research centre delivery partner, for them to develop an expression of interest and a full application. Upon the business board's formal approval, an acceptance letter will be sent to the Secretary of State on the 17th of July next week, along with a very large template for further information that BEIS have asked us to complete. And I'd remind you that, again, approval at this point from the business board is only relevant or relative to the approval of the allocation of this funding towards this project. The project itself will still have to successfully make its way through an application process, the evaluations, the entrepreneurs assessment panel, and then finally to come to you in September to approve the actual spend of this project. So that's the proposition and the recommendations being put to you.
Thanks, John. Just before we go on to questions, then a couple of points I'd like to make. Getting to where we are today has moved very, very quickly. I just wanted to give board members the comfort that whilst we haven't had the opportunity to come out to the wider board to consult on any of these matters, we've been very reliant upon the processes that we'd already put in place to score and evaluate the various projects. We were blessed with the fact that, given a lot of the previous work, we'd already got a number of projects in the hopper. So there are very few new projects. And in that respect, there was no need really to go back around the buoy on those. The processes have just been followed to arrive at the right prioritised list. I have been consulted along the way in that respect and have a reasonable understanding of most of them and the logic behind that. And that's been done with the best of intentions of just being able to move forward very, very quickly. If we hadn't got the application in on time, we wouldn't have been in the draw. And we need to get back now quickly to get them to ring fence the 14.6 million aligned to these two areas, which, as John rightly says, will then go back through the full round of scrutiny from a due diligence point of view and from a governance point of view, and come back to us for the appropriate approvals to proceed ultimately. But we do need to get back to them quickly. The innovation company is not something I'm minded to want to get drawn on who that is at the moment. What I would say is it's on our patch at the moment. It's a very prestigious facility that satisfies a very important role in the UK, and it would be a very sad loss to the area if we weren't able to continue to attract the retention of that on our patch in this new location in Peterborough. The added benefit, of course, with that in not only retaining it and the jobs, but also its fit with what we're trying to do with the university and the direction of travel there is absolutely perfect in many respects. So that very much has my support. But mindful that much of this would have come to you very fresh, let's go around the table and see what questions people have. Particularly keen to hear from Al, who's been doing some work around the university on our behalf and understanding some of that. Perhaps not particularly relevant to phase 2, but nevertheless, I'm sure people will be interested to hear how that's coming along quickly if we can. Questions?
Would you like me to just share from my perspective first then, Austin?
Please, Al, yes, thank you.
Yeah, obviously I haven't been involved specifically in the conversations around the phase 2, but I have been involved in the dialogue and conversations on phase 1, which has absolutely shaped into what I think is a really positive opportunity. There is without a doubt a big gap from Peterborough's perspective, but I think in the broader sense of whatever we might all perceive as post-COVID, I think the alignment of courses and provision that's being provided has the best possible opportunity of success. There are no guarantees along the way, but the model is such that there is sufficient flex that the project can scale based on demand. I think the other really strong aspect is the mixture of course provision and a lot of it being employer and workforce linked, which I think again is really, really important. So from a Peterborough perspective, in terms of knowing what the local business community and also wearing a hat as a MAP Trust chair, looking at it from an education pathways point of view, it ticks a lot of boxes. I appreciate right now there's always a few question marks about what's the world going to look like in terms of risk versus return, but I think it sits in a strong place. So I look at this without much background on the second phase and think if we're looking at building that impetus behind a new university, this is potentially a really good way of extending that and drawing in some complementary research and skills alongside it. So I think it's a very exciting opportunity.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate your insight. Questions, anyone? You're all very quiet. Rebecca? You're on mute, Rebecca.
Sorry. I just wanted to maybe, John, if you could explain a bit. Either I've got a bit of the wrong end of the stick, which is quite possible, so you can put me straight. But I totally support this and what we're being asked to do. My question is around how we got to that list and how we can be in a clearer position if it happen again. Because I felt like we discussed this at a previous meeting and we were assured that there were a number of shovel-ready projects that we were talking about. And from memory, included the Peterborough Station Quarter, and there were about 3 or 4 of them. And looking at the list in the appendix, there's a whole long list, some of which I'm not at all familiar with, and others like the Station Quarter, I'm not seeing on there. And I just wanted, have I muddled up 2 lists, or has there been a period of work that's gone between the 2?
I think anyone would be forgiven for muddling this up. It's blooming complicated. Yeah, so let me untangle the 2 things. What we talked about last time, actually as part of our normal run-through of what's in the pipeline, were projects that were in the pipeline that were the right size project to use the amount of money we got left. And we'd sort of got £5 or £6 million left, for instance. So of course, within that there were North Stowe and CAM Development Company and the CRC company, the CRC Construction Hub that are all now coming to the July board meeting. Plus there were ones that you would have seen that were down the line, like Station Quarter, that wanted 2 million. And yes, so that was a set of projects that we talked about. And you'd be quite right to observe University Phase 2 wasn't on the list. What this was about was, have you got shovel-ready big strategic projects, and can you rank them within priority? Now, University Phase 2 would rank higher than Station Quarter in priority, but also Station Quarter didn't get on the list because of deliverability. There's no way it could have ever, what they were looking for, by the way, was a contribution to build a multi-storey car park on the other side of the station to potentially kick off the commercial development of Station Quarter. The other money's not in place. The chances of actually getting planning permission on something really quite brand new, like a multi-storey car park near a station, there's no chance that would have happened. So, so projects like the Station Quarter that you would have seen in a short-term pipeline didn't make it onto this list because of either deliverability or strategic fit. And the letter from the Secretary of State was explicit on some criteria, but what caused a lot of trouble was they were implicit on another set of criteria. The explicit stuff was, it's got to be super high strategic fit, it's got to be deliverable within 18 months, and you must have finished spending and it must be complete by January 2022. You've got to have high jobs impact in the 18 months afterwards. And they even mentioned, because we'd been lobbying them, because if you remember, the reason University Stage 2 wasn't on our immediate list is we were waiting for ERDF opportunity to bid for ERDF for the National Reserve Fund. The National Reserve Fund collapsed earlier, in about mid-June. The Mayor lobbied the hell out of the ministers, and wouldn't you know it, on the Secretary of State's letter, there was actually something that said innovation ecosystems in left behind cities. So that was their way of sort of squaring the pitch for withdrawing the reserve funding. The implicit criteria were wrapped up in a statement that said, of course, these projects that you put forward must go through your local assurance framework. What that means to us is they've got to fit the LGF criteria, eligibility criteria, and the prospectus, and the evaluation criteria. And that's how we ranked the projects in terms of strategic fit, deliverability, and would they have a chance of getting through the LGF applications process. And some of the local authorities did put forward quite a few projects that just weren't LGF projects. So that's how the thing operated, and we have a meeting with the local authority leaders next week to explain that to them, and I'm sure they'll be quite challenging in that.
Thanks, John. I think it's also
Thanks,
true to say that Bays have taken a particular interest in pressure testing all of this very quickly. So there could be no grey areas in any of the projects. They have to be really robust and supportable, otherwise we wouldn't move forward. Tina.
So I've put this in the chat. I'm a little bit confused about the process. Because what if we, unlikely I know, but we go through the evaluation and there's some fundamental flaw with this project? What happens to the money?
Yeah, so the agreement we've got with Bays at the moment, and what we're putting forward in this paper, is that this is the priority project that we engage with them on. If it does fall, we will look at funding, suggesting we fund and look at the deliverability of the other two projects. But this is our priority. Bays and MHCLG aren't minded to have the embarrassment of withdrawing the 14.6 million.
All the more reason why we need to get to a point quickly in September where we crack on with them, or not, as the case may be. And Andy.
Thank you, Austin. So, like others, I understand that with the time pressure around this, and I had some questions about the process. I was interested, John, in the appendix list. A bit like Rebecca, I recognise some of the projects. I don't recognise others at all. I don't really understand where they've come from. And it talks about the projects being LGF eligible. So did we go through the list of all of the LGF funded projects that we've already approved and see if any of those would have benefited from or could have used additional funding, and get in touch with the people who proposed those to see whether they would like to lob stuff in, which would have been a relatively quick process, because that's our LGF list, isn't it? There are others here that have not been, that seem to have appeared, but so the rural gigabyte voucher, which I would love given my crap bandwidth, but the rural gigabyte voucher extension scheme is not, we've not really talked about before, and so it just feels a slightly confused process. Now I know that's partly the time scale, and we are where we are, and I'm not suggesting you unpick that and given we've got to get a little back to government, but I'd like to be reassured as a board member that we learn from this and make sure that that we're better, because these requests will come again, we're better prepared in the future to make sure we do go through a robust process. So the first question, though, the fundamental question is, did we review the entire list of LGF projects and check whether any of those could have been eligible?
Thank you, Andy. So yeah, I'll answer that one first. And of course, your other question was, what the hell is all those other projects and where they came from? And I share your bemusement. So the Secretary of State's letter was super clear. Looking at the paragraph at the bottom of the page one, new proposals. They were not looking for anything that was additive or I'll just bung an extension on this building. It was new shovel-ready proposals. So no, we didn't consider any of the past projects to go back and extend. They were looking for new infrastructure build proposals. In terms of the myriad of projects that appeared, there were probably another 6 or 7 that were put forward that didn't make it onto that list because they weren't just ranked low, they were just completely ineligible in terms of LGF funding. And the genesis of all those new projects that I haven't shown you before because they didn't exist was the local authorities, because of the confusion caused by the Secretary of State copying the letter to the mayor, to them, they felt empowered to put their own projects forward. Some of them consulted us, Some of them didn't consult us at all, and we were surprised to hear government contacting us and saying, what do you want to do with this other list of projects? So we ranked all the projects that other people had put forward against the criteria that I've just gone through earlier on, which is the criteria in the letter and then the LGF criteria themselves. That ranked a number which you see. It rejected some projects as well. So that's why you haven't seen them. And I did express a little bit of irritation with officers from the other local authorities in terms of how they could possibly have LGF projects that they hadn't engaged us on or talked to us about in the last year and a half that we've had our call open.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that was quite insightful, actually, that we found projects buried within some of the local buoys that ought to have been brought to the table for the business board to have considered in the broader rounds. Absolutely bonkers, actually, some of it. So there's certainly an important lesson learnt there. The Green Energy Park was an example of that, John, that Huntingdon Council had been looking at that for some time, and it wasn't on our radar screen.
Yeah, and I think it's a mix that some of the local authorities were being a bit opportunistic in knowing full well they got some projects that weren't LGF projects, but not fully, because the letter wasn't clear, not fully understanding that this was an LGF ask. The letter wasn't super clear about that. So there was a lot of projects that just flat weren't LGF. But as you say, there were a couple, and that's why Huntingdon Energy Park actually made it onto our priority list that really Huntingdon should have been talking to us about and hadn't.
Indeed.
And then I had a point of clarification as well. Sorry, Austin. I had one point of clarification, which is on page 20 of the case of the papers. So it says phase 1 of the university project is fully funded with 33.5 million of local, private and public sector investment. And we now seek accelerated access to 2021 LGF funding. So, because I thought we still had to decide about phase 1.
No. The CPCA is still to authorise the 12.3 million of gain share funding through the SOBC, OBC and full business case process that goes forward to the CA board in July. That same FBC does come to the business board, but only for note, because the business board has, as with all its LGF applications, has made that decision. The LGF process is a set of evaluations, an entrepreneur's assessment panel, and a recommendation to the board to approve. And that was done. I can't remember which month it was done in, but the business board has approved the 12.5 million.
But the Combined Authority Board hasn't yet, or hasn't ratified it yet.
No, the Combined Authority has ratified the 12.5 million. They did it in the same month that the business board approved it. The Combined Authority hasn't approved its 12.3 million finally, because it's a different process.
And is the 12.3 on top of the 33 point? I'm just trying to understand the sentence, John, because I'm confused about how this is getting funded. So is the 12.3 then on top of the 33.5?
No, absolutely
and
not.
If it is, then we can't make the statement that it's fully funded.
Absolutely, we couldn't. No, you're right. 12.3 CPCA, 12.5 LGF, 1.8 PCC in the land, and 6.5 from the academic partner.
Okay.
All fully committed and signed up.
So all fully committed and signed off. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Austin.
Let's go to Nitin, please.
Just on the subjects of projects, this doesn't seem to be a lot from people who are not necessarily connected to the board. How do we manage to sort of get a wider participation in this?
Yeah, if you actually look at the number of applicants, there's literally hundreds that aren't the board, and even the larger projects like Illumina, as an example, and
Maybe it just seems that to me. I mean, the last few I've been sort of sat and listened to, and don't forget, some of us only joined in January. There seemed to be quite a lot centered around, 5 or 6 people around, and they've been significant. I just wonder whether we're actually doing enough to let people know that there's a big opportunity for companies, and particularly smaller sort of medium-sized businesses, that you really want to sort of get engaged in this as well.
Yeah. We're dealing with a couple of newer projects that will mop up a smaller amount of what we've got left at the moment. But I will make sure that I can see Steve's on there and listening. I'll make sure Steve gives you the board a whole list so you can see all of the successful applicants, and the board actually make up a small percentage of the total number of successful applicants. But we'll get that. We'll get that list.
Yeah, I think it's just important that we do sort of spread it out as well to the community as well, to make sure that there is a buzz around the place to say, because I think that when we listen to the projects here, I get quite a good feeling. But does that go outside? Because, they're not necessarily all involved with it. And that, I think, is a challenge, especially as we're going through the next phase.
Yeah, although it is tricky. We did significant PR work and comms work on promoting the LGF to lots and lots of companies when it was launched in 2019, and we kept pretty much going on that all the way through to Christmas this year. We did back off after that because we got a pipeline that we figured that would use all of our funds. So further stimulating the market would only cause disappointment, because we'd looked at our pipeline analysis and figured that we'd run out.
Okay. It might be helpful, John, to share the full list of projects that come in, because I mean a lot of them end up on the cutting room floor because they're such poor quality applications, or they're just not hitting the spot by a country mile. Maybe board members would feel more comfortable if they could see that at some point.
So Steve will add to the list that I'd already defined the list of applicants as well, that give that funnel view of the applications.
All righty, mindful of time. Are there any more questions?
I had a quick one, Austin.
Jason?
Yeah, John, I seem to recall, I was trying to look through my notes as we were talking, but wasn't there a dispute around the academic partner that was chosen and the process for choosing them? And how is that resolved? And I was just wondering if we're allocating more funds around the University of Peterborough issue. Has it been resolved now with that party that thought the process might not have been as robust as they'd like?
Yes, that was resolved, I think, at the first week of June. So we didn't report it because it was still live, which is where you're picking it up from. It was still live at the last board meeting. We discussed it. But within, I think, a week of that board meeting, it was completely resolved and the challenge fell away.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there are no more questions, let's come to the recommendation then. John read out the recommendation, so I won't do it again, but as set out in the papers, the recommendations are A through D. I think we'll process them on a collective of all 4 of them, unless anyone has any particular objections to anything in isolation. And I'd like to put that to the vote. I wonder if we could go around the voting members just to get a positive confirmation on this one, please, of your view. Let's start with Nitin, please. You're on mute, Nitin.
In favour of moving forward.
Thank you. Nikki?
Sorry, I was on mute, trying to get off. Yeah, the same. Yeah, in favour.
Al?
Yeah, big thumbs up from me.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yes, I support the recommendations.
Thank you. Jason?
Yes, I also support.
Thank you. Faye?
Yep, agree with all recommendations. Thank you.
Andy?
Agree with them, but I'd like to add an additional one, which is that we are clearer, that we learn the lessons of the process this time, and that we make sure the board is comfortable with how we might approach something similar in the future.
Noted. Thank you, Andy. Tina?
Yes, I support the recommendations.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I support.
Thank you, Mark. I don't think I missed anyone, and I support the recommendation here. So there we have it. So unanimous support to move forward, please, John. Let's go and get the money and bring this back to board with the details so that we can get through the appropriate governance steps at that point, please.
Absolutely, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Good job on behalf of the officers. A lot of hard work gone into this. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If there are no other matters, I look forward to joining everyone on the full board meeting later in the month. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
See you then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.